Hey, my name is Chris and I'm a soccer fan. I grew up in England playing in the park with my mates, and then when I was 15 I joined a team called Dealtown Colts. Played all the way through my teens on local teams, and then when I was 21 I came to the States. Still a big soccer fan. I'm 60 now. I still play, I've refereed, I've coached, I've done every facet of the game. I love the World Cup. Every 4 years, something really huge to look forward to. In the summer of 2015, I had this idea. What if I could get together a couple of friends and we would do a World Cup trip? But we wouldn't go to the World Cup itself. Instead, we would go to countries that are playing in the World Cup, and we would be there with their shirt on, the national shirt, and in amongst fan zones cheering on that national team. In December of 2017, all 32 teams that had qualified for the World Cup had been put into their groups and the schedule had been set. Using that schedule and the teams in Europe, we decided on the countries that we were going to visit and the games we were going to watch. Top of the list was Iceland, their first time ever in the World Cup. We were then going to travel to Brussels, Belgium, on to Berlin, Germany, then to a couple of locations in Croatia, and then finish off our trip in England. We spent a lot of time planning, getting together our flights, car rental, Airbnb. Managed to borrow some international shirts from my soccer friends, and this video is the result of all of that work. I hope you enjoy it. It's about 25 minutes, so grab a beer and put your feet up. Our first stop was Iceland, a country defined by its dramatic landscape with volcanoes, geysers, hot springs, cold glaciers, lava fields, and a beautiful coastline. So it is 8 minutes past 1 in the morning, and as you can see it's still daylight out. Hikmet and I found ourselves at a Viking gathering. All of the tents here are for people selling things related to Vikings, and there's people dressed up, and there's going to be all sorts of battles and games and stuff like that. Hey!
Oh, I once fell in love with a Highland girl with biceps like a bear. Her hair had shone like funny goes, and this was 10 and more. Oh, rattling bog, the bog down in the valley. On that tree there was a branch, a rare branch, a rattling branch.
Come on, sing it, sing it.
A tree in a hole in the bog down in the valley.
There's Hikmet with his Viking friends.
Tomorrow. Oh, I'm here.
And this serves no.
Oh, we're here over there. Yeah.
It's the land of the midnight sun. Time to go home, I suppose. So this is Iceland, where the weather can change at any time. And over there, it's still sunny. One of the first things you notice as you drive around Iceland is the complete lack of trees. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely beautiful, but not a tree to be seen anywhere. As beautiful as this is not the reason we stopped here. The main reason we stopped here was to check out all the bras on the fence. And of course, why wouldn't you? That's where we're headed to. The rain will help the waterfall. We're trying to look on the bright side. We are about to head underneath, walk behind it. We spent the rest of our day driving around Iceland, checking out the absolutely incredible scenery, but more importantly, all of the beautiful waterfalls that Iceland has to offer. Hikmet, you headed in? Let's do it. So this is kind of fun. Lots of people here, and this is why. Check that out. Here comes Hikmet. So we are at a hot thermal springs. That water coming out of the ground there is at 212 degrees. It's a little bit too hot for me to jump into, but currently geothermal power heats 89% of the homes in Iceland. These hot springs often flow into natural lagoons that people use for rest and relaxation, and a plethora of other wonderful, healthy benefits. Iceland's most iconic and impressive waterfall was Gullfoss. Viewed from above, it seemingly disappears into the earth. The power and noise is immense, and pictures don't do it justice. It far exceeds Niagara Falls. Falls I've ever seen, so really neat. Who is this United guy? What we really came to Iceland for was the Argentina-Iceland game. In the pouring rain, we went to a local park and joined all the local fans doing their Iceland clap and getting ready for a huge game. It rained through most of the game, but you could just feel the excitement rising. the 16th minute, Aguero scored for Argentina, but only 7 minutes later, Iceland tied the game. In the 63rd minute, the great Lionel Messi stepped up to take a penalty for Argentina and missed it. This was a huge upset. Argentina, two-time World Cup champions. Iceland, first time ever in the tournament. And to finish off an absolutely fantastic day, Hikmet was interviewed by a news reporter and ended up on the 6 o'clock news.
We're going to travel to Belgium, then to Germany, to Croatia, then to England to watch all the country's games in the country we're in.
Our time in Iceland had come to an end. The hospitality had been fantastic, the scenery was beautiful, and it ended with an incredible soccer game. It was now time to pack our bags and head on over to Brussels, Belgium for the next leg of our trip. Hikmet and I only had a couple of days in Brussels, so we took some time to check out the Cathedral of St. Michael's, then over to HALLE Gate with its original structure dating back to 1381 with a fantastic spiral staircase, and then over to the Mont des Arts Garden. My favourite time in Brussels was when Hikmet and I jumped on a tram to who knows where, and as we're driving along he looked out the window and recognised that we were in a Turkish neighbourhood.
Adam nasıl çalışıyor bak.
Later, we found a Turkish restaurant and had an absolutely fantastic meal. It was then time to turn our attention to the game. And then, of course, there was the England game. Next stop was Berlin, Germany, where Shannon joined us and our team of 3 was complete. After World War II, Germany, including Berlin, was divided into Soviet, American, British, and French zones of occupation. The communist government and economy in the East meant that most lived in extreme poverty, while those in the West lived a much more modern lifestyle with a relaxed and free culture. Eastern communism and Western democracy. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961 to stop East Germans from defecting to the West. Our next stop was the Topography of Terror, which is located along the excavated cellar walls of the original building, the Gestapo headquarters, and below the longest remaining piece of the Berlin Wall in central Berlin. The exhibit examined the transformation between democracy and dictatorship in Germany in 1932-33, and describes how the Nazis managed to gain control of Berlin until it was consumed by fire and bombs at the end of the Second World War in 1945. The purpose of the exhibit is education and awareness of how and why this must never happen again. There were checkpoints along the Berlin Wall where people could cross over. The most famous was Checkpoint Charlie, adjacent to which was the Black Box exhibition, which records the development of the Cold War through historical films, witnesses, artifacts, photos, and documents. Behind the Black Box exhibit was Charlie's Beach, time for a soccer game and a beer. Our next point of interest was the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe, also known as the Holocaust Memorial. The architect placed 2,711 concrete slabs of different heights in the memorial. The area is open day and night, and from all four sides you can fully immerse yourself in the fully accessible spatial structure. The memorial is on a slight slope, and its wave-like form is different wherever you stand. On our last day, we decided to take a guided bicycle tour of Berlin, which turned out to be a really good idea.
That's the Berliner Dome. That's the only original building on our tour today. Okay, so this building was bombed, but the bomb that landed in it was a dud and did not detonate. Otherwise, all the buildings are new. The Reichstag is the German parliament. It's where the parliament meets. They would have said, no, this wall is to keep out the enemy, right? And they made that very clear in how they referred to the wall. It was the anti-fascist protection rampart. One word.
Between our various sightseeing gigs, we stopped by and picked up some food and some beer and headed to the Kulturbräuerei to pick up several different games. But it was the Germany-Sweden game that we came to Berlin to watch, in front of the Brandenburg Gate, along with 400,000 of our closest soccer friends. Despite the heavy rain, the crowd was electrifying. Germany, having lost their first game, this was a must-win game for them. And the €1 ponchos that we bought earlier in the day turned out to be really useful. Germany went down 1-0 in the first half, but came back to win the game. In the 5th minute of overtime, the crowd went nuts. We'll relish this experience forever and the incredible time we had in Germany, but it was now time to pack our bags and head to Croatia. First stop, Zagreb, the capital in the north.
Go back here.
So we bumped into a gentleman on the street after the game, and he told us about the tunnels here in Zagreb. And now we have our own personal guided tour. These are the tunnels that were used during the Second World War to seek shelter from the bombing raids. And they come in from several different directions. Here we are, we're right in the center right now. But it does head off way out there. You can feel the history in the tunnels, and we were lucky enough to be there when there was an art exhibit going on.
Oh yeah.
I wonder if the like gravity
pull
is
system.
this,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
pulling, so one goes up, one goes down.
The town square is where we went to watch World Cup games while we were in Zagreb. It was really a fun place. Every time we went, there were different fans from different countries, and we even managed to catch an England game there. Always, of course, with a beer or two. The Museum of Broken Relationships was by far my favourite part of Zagreb. It is dedicated to failed love relationships and to broken family connections. It's a quirky museum, and I love quirky. The exhibits include personal objects left behind from former lovers, accompanied by brief descriptions. Displayed amid a string of all-white rooms are donations from around the globe, each with its story attached. The next stop was Dubrovnik, on the southern tip of Croatia. Located on the Adriatic Sea or Dalmatian coast, it is easy to see why this is a prominent tourist destination. It is known for its distinctive old town, encircled by a massive stone wall which was completed in the 16th century. The old town is filled with limestone streets and narrow cobblestone alleyways begging to be explored. The Stradum is the main thoroughfare. The steps behind us is where Cersei began her walk of shame in Game of Thrones. I really enjoyed the War Photo Limited Museum. They exhibit the work of world-renowned photojournalists who risk their lives to bring images of war to the eyes of the world. It is a sobering exhibit. The photos are powerful, painful, brutal, but also beautiful, courageous, and sometimes absurd. On a positive note, we came to Dubrovnik for a Croatia game, and tonight was the night.
Hey boys, how we doing?
And this is my favourite photo, a deserted main street of Dubrovnik about 3 a.m. after we just left the nightclub. It was an early morning for us on our last leg of the trip. For me, it was home. Deal in Kent, England. First stop, a visit with Mum and Dad, and then we jumped on some bikes for a guided tour of sunny Deal. It's an old town dating back to the early 12th century, with small streets and alleyways, historically the home of smugglers. We stopped by Deal town, where I played football as a teenager, and then on to the seafront, where waves crashed against the beach. Deal is a seaside town with a small fishing presence. And the old telephone kiosk is still there from when I was a kid. The following day we visited Dover Castle and had a lovely 9-mile walk home over the White Cliffs. The England-Belgium game was a disappointment for the English fans. We lost 1-0, which is why we see all the glum faces here. However, we did get through to the next round, against Colombia, and the game went to penalty kicks. This was the longest 20 seconds of the whole trip. So what started as a crazy idea turned into the trip of a lifetime. World Cup 2022 is in Qatar, but who's interested in a trip to South America?